Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is going to be fascinating. We're talking about roots of resilience, indigenous wisdom for sustainable futures.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is. This handbook is amazing. It's packed with insights into how indigenous communities around the world have thrived in all kinds of environments, for generations.
Well, a long time, yeah.
Using practices that really focus on that harmony with nature.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking specifically at Chapter 6 today.
Okay, great.
Which is all about future directions and challenges.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's not just looking at what these practices are, but why they matter so much right now.
Exactly. Why are they relevant to us today?
Right.
Especially with all these crazy environmental challenges we're facing.
Right.
So think living root bridges.
Wow.
Ancient water harvesting techniques. Hunting practices that put our grocery stores to shame.
Yeah, seriously.
We're going to unpack all that good stuff.
Right.
But first, let's set the stage a little bit.
Okay.
The book doesn't really sugarcoat it. We're facing some serious sustainability problems.
We are.
Big time.
Yeah, climate change is not some, future threat anymore.
Right.
It's here.
It's happening.
Biodiversity is declining at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
And our resource consumption, well, let's just say it's not helping.
Yeah, not a pretty picture.
No.
But that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because indigenous knowledge systems, developed over thousands of years,
yeah.
offer some really potential solutions.
Yeah, like a guidebook almost.
It's like a living library of wisdom, right?
Right.
That we can all tap into.
And constantly evolving.
Exactly. That's so important to remember.
Yeah.
This knowledge isn't frozen in time.
No.
It's dynamic. It's adaptive.
It adapts.
Constantly evolving to meet new challenges. And that's what makes it so resilient, right?
Right.
The book really emphasizes the interconnectedness of everything, too.
Yeah, it's like a web.
That web of relationships between humans, animals, plants, the environment.
Everything's connected.
That's a perspective we could use a lot more of in today's world, I think.
Totally.
So how does this translate to actual real-world sustainability problems?
Well, the book has some amazing examples.
Okay, right.
Take climate change.
Okay.
Indigenous communities in the Arctic are literally on the front lines.
They're seeing it firsthand.
They're experiencing the effects directly,
Yeah.
but they're not just watching it happen, right?
No.
They're collaborating with scientists,
That's so cool.
combining their understanding of the land.
Their deep understanding.
Yeah, with modern scientific tools
Wow.
to document those changes and come up with strategies to adapt.
So smart.
It's like merging two different knowledge systems
Totally.
together.
I love that. It makes you wonder, what could we accomplish if that was the norm,
Right.
not the exception?
Exactly.
And then down in the Amazon,
Yeah.
indigenous groups are like the guardians of the rainforest.
Protecting it.
They're using their ancestral knowledge to fight deforestation.
It makes sense, right?
Totally.
They've lived sustainably in that ecosystem for centuries.
Yeah.
They know how it works.
They know what's up.
It's like they have all the answers right there.
Yeah, like a living encyclopedia of solutions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. And speaking of solutions,
Okay.
the book highlights some really interesting agricultural practices,
Oh, yeah? Like what?
like the Three Sisters technique.
That's a cool name.
It is.
What is that?
So it's a classic example of polyculture,
Okay.
practiced by different indigenous peoples in North America. Basically, they plant maize, beans, and squash together.
All together.
Yeah, all in one little mini ecosystem.
Oh, wow.
Super cool.
So they all help each other out.
Exactly. The maize supports the beans to climb.
Okay.
The beans put nitrogen back into the soil.
Wow.
And the squash helps keep the moisture in
So smart.
and keeps weeds out.
It's brilliant.
It is, right?
It really shows how much they understand plants,
What's a deep understanding? They're not just planting stuff.
No.
They're creating a relationship,
Exactly.
working with nature.
Yeah, instead of trying to control it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of working with nature,
Yeah.
what about those Zuni waffle gardens?
Waffle gardens.
Yeah, they're really cool.
I've never heard of those.
So imagine these grids of sunken plots designed to catch all the rainwater,
Oh, wow.
even the dew.
So smart.
Especially in dry areas,
Yeah.
they had to conserve every drop.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It makes you realize how much we take water for granted, right?
Right.
I'll just turn on the tap.
Exactly.
They had to really work for it.
Yeah.
And then there are the Chinampas.
Oh, yeah.
those man-made islands
Floating gardens.
created by the Mexica people.
It's incredible.
So cool.
Ancient agroforestry.
Wow.
It's like, how do you even think of that?
Right.
Sustainable food in an unstable environment.
They're brilliant.
It is.
And they're still using them in Mexico today.
I know.
It's a testament to, like, their ingenuity, their foresight.
They're sure.
But indigenous knowledge goes way beyond farming, right?
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're talking about sustainable resource management.
All over the world.
Yeah, all over.
Like the Connaught system, for example.
What's that?
So it's this ancient technology they use to transport water underground.
Underground.
Yeah, in dry regions
Right.
to reduce evaporation,
Oh, that makes sense.
keep the water flowing.
So smart. Like, they were creating underground waterways.
Basically,
Wow.
moving that precious water to where it was needed most.
That allowed communities to, like, thrive.
Exactly, even in the driest places.
And then there's the Subac system in Bali.
Oh, yeah, that one's fascinating.
It's a community-based water management system, right?
Right, for their rice paddies.
So intricate.
And deeply connected to their philosophy.
About harmony with nature?
It's not just practical.
Right. It goes deeper than that.
Yeah, it's about respecting the balance between people and nature.
Yeah.
And the spiritual realm, too.
It's a much more holistic way of looking at it.
It is.
We could definitely learn a lot from that.
Totally. Yeah, it really highlights how indigenous knowledge often blends those practical solutions with like a deeper spiritual understanding.
Mhm.
And, speaking of understanding ecosystems,
Yeah.
let's talk about cultural burning.
Okay, cultural burning.
Uh-huh.
I'm intrigued. This one sounds kind of counterintuitive,
I know, right?
Like you're using fire
Yeah,
to prevent fires.
exactly. It's all about controlled burns. It's a
Uh-huh.
land management technique,
Okay.
especially in Australia,
Okay.
where they strategically burn off that undergrowth.
To prevent those huge wildfires.
Exactly, those out of control ones.
Yeah.
So it's more about working with fire,
Yeah.
as part of the ecosystem.
Not being afraid of it.
Right, not suppressing it all the time.
Mhm.
Because fire can actually be beneficial.
Oh, interesting.
Some plants need fire to germinate,
I-
and the ash from the burns enriches the soil.
It's like a whole cycle.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a renewal process.
Makes you think,
It
right?
does.
About how we always try to control nature
Yeah,
instead of just learning from it.
exactly. Working with it.
So how do we make sure that all this indigenous knowledge doesn't disappear?
That's the big question.
Yeah, how do we protect it?
Right.
Share it respectfully
In the right way, yeah.
and integrate it with, like, our modern approaches.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
That's where the second part of Chapter Sense comes in, right?
Yes.
Fostering collaborations for knowledge exchange and integration.
It's a mouthful.
It is, but it's important stuff
It is.
because just saying, oh, indigenous knowledge is valuable, that's not enough.
No.
We
but
need action.
action, yeah.
So how do we build those bridges?
Well, it takes everyone, right?
Yeah.
Indigenous communities,
Scientists.
policymakers.
Yeah, everyone working together
recognizing that we all have something to offer.
and something to learn. But these partnerships, they can't just be like surface level.
Yeah,
They have to be built on respect,
respect. Yeah,
recognizing indigenous rights and sovereignty.
absolutely. That's key.
It can't be about like taking their knowledge or imposing solutions.
No, it's got to be a two-way street.
Built on trust.
Trust. Yeah.
So what are some key ingredients for these collaborations to actually work?
Well, the book highlights a few things,
Oh.
like participatory policymaking.
What does that mean?
So it means making sure Indigenous communities have a real say
Okay.
in the policies that affect their land and resources.
Not just making decisions about them,
Right, without them.
without them even being there.
Exactly.
They need to be at the table.
From the beginning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then there's capacity building.
What's that?
It's about giving Indigenous communities the resources they need
Okay.
and the training.
To manage their own resources.
Yeah, on their own terms.
So it's not about like coming in and saying, here's how you do it.
No, it's about empowering them
Yeah, to do it their way.
while preserving their knowledge and their heritage.
That makes sense.
And then there's co-creation of knowledge.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
It is. It's about blending Indigenous and scientific methods.
To come up with new solutions.
Exactly, taking the best of both worlds
I like that.
to tackle these complex challenges.
It's not about one replacing the other, right?
No, it's about working together.
Yeah, finding that common ground.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about sharing the benefits.
Right. Equitable benefit sharing.
So any benefits, whether they're financial or scientific,
Or social,
Yeah.
even have to be shared fairly.
with the communities who hold that knowledge.
Absolutely. It has to be reciprocal.
A true partnership
With mutual respect.
and mutual benefit.
Exactly.
But what happens when different sources of indigenous knowledge seem to contradict each other?
Oh, that's a great question.
Like different communities have different practices.
Yeah, it can get complicated.
How do we navigate that?
Well, it's important to remember that indigenous knowledge is very specific
To a place.
to a place, yeah.
To a certain experience.
Exactly. So what works in the Amazon rainforest?
Might not work in the Arctic.
Exactly. Different environments, different solutions.
So it's about understanding that diversity is a good thing,
It is. It's a strength.
not a weakness.
It's like having different dialects of the same language,
Oh, I like that.
Variations that reflect the unique needs of each community.
So instead of seeing those differences as problems,
Right.
we should see them as opportunities.
Opportunities to
To
learn,
learn more.
to deepen our understanding.
Yeah, to appreciate the richness of these knowledge systems.
Exactly. Instead of trying to force everything into one box.
Embrace the complexity.
Embrace it.
Adapt our approach.
Be flexible.
So how do we approach these variations in a way that's respectful?
By asking questions,
Okay.
digging deeper into the context, recognizing that knowledge is often tied to a specific place and experience.
It's about understanding the nuances
The nuances.
and why those variations exist.
Exactly. And remembering that indigenous knowledge isn't static.
Right.
It's constantly evolving,
It's alive
adapting to new challenges.
and incorporating new information.
Exactly. So what worked in the past might not be the best solution today.
Right. Things change.
And what works in one location might need to be adjusted for another.
So it's about recognizing that dynamic nature
This dynamism, yeah.
and creating space for it to keep growing.
To evolve.
And that's why it's so important to involve indigenous communities directly.
Absolutely. They're the experts.
The knowledge holders.
We need to listen to them
Learn from them.
and respect their leadership.
It's about approaching this with humility, right?
Humility. Yeah.
Recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
We don't.
But beyond that, there are ethical considerations too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
This isn't just about taking what we find interesting or useful.
No, it's about respecting knowledge that's been passed down for generations.
Often orally.
Through stories, through ceremonies,
There are protocols,
protocols, yeah.
responsibilities,
We have to be mindful of the cultural context,
the spiritual significance.
the potential sensitivities around sharing certain knowledge.
So we need to approach this with respect,
Deep respect.
seeking permission before sharing anything,
Always.
and making sure that any benefits are shared fairly.
With the communities who hold that knowledge?
It's about being ethical,
Ethical, yeah.
responsible.
We have to be mindful of the potential for exploitation.
Yeah, or appropriation.
Indigenous communities have been marginalized for so long,
Their knowledge taken without consent.
without compensation.
We need to break that cycle.
We do.
Make sure we're not repeating those harmful patterns.
It's about building relationships based on trust,
Mutual respect.
not just treating indigenous knowledge as something to be
Yeah.
extracted.
It's about partnership.
True partnership.
And remembering that indigenous knowledge is diverse.
Diverse, yeah.
There are different perspectives
Different practices.
within and between communities.
So we can't generalize
We have to engage with these specific communities.
whose knowledge we're interested in.
Take the time to build those relationships.
Listen to their stories.
Understand their values.
Out from their expertise.
All of that.
It's a process,
It is.
but a rewarding one.
It sounds like it.
It is.
So can you give us some examples of these collaborations actually working?
Oh, there are so many.
Okay, pick one.
Well, one that comes to mind is the work being done with Indigenous fire management in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about cultural burning earlier.
Yeah.
And there's a real resurgence of interest in those techniques.
Mhm.
Indigenous communities have been managing fire for a long time.
Thousands of years, right?
Exactly. And they know how to use it, not just to prevent those big wildfires,
Right.
but to actually help the ecosystem.
To make it healthier.
Exactly, to promote biodiversity. Wow, even manage carbon cycles.
It's amazing how much they understand about fire.
It is, right?
It's a much more holistic approach
It is.
than what we're used to.
And now they're partnering with scientists and land managers
Cool.
to integrate this traditional knowledge into modern practices.
It's like the best of both worlds coming together.
It is. It's a beautiful example of how these two knowledge systems can complement each other.
It shows that indigenous knowledge isn't just about the past.
No.
It has vital insights for the future.
For our future.
It's about creating a future where indigenous knowledge is valued.
And integrated into everything we do.
How we manage our resources,
How we design our cities.
how we deal with climate change.
Everything.
It's not just a piece of the puzzle.
It's essential.
It's the whole picture.
The big picture.
Yeah, it feels like we're at this turning point
It does,
where
yeah.
people are starting to get it.
Yeah.
That indigenous knowledge is crucial
Essential.
for creating a sustainable future.
Yeah.
But these collaborations, as awesome as they are,
Yeah.
raise some tricky questions too, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, how do we make sure they're actually equitable?
That's the big question.
It's one thing to talk about respect and collaboration,
Yeah.
but how do we actually put that into practice?
Right. How do we translate those good intentions?
It's tangible action.
Yeah, because there's this long history of,
Yep.
indigenous communities being excluded,
Their voices not being heard.
their knowledge being ignored. Yeah.
So it's not enough to just invite them to the table. We
Right.
have to create a space
Where they're actually heard, where
Yeah.
their expertise is valued,
and where they have real power.
decision-making power.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just collaboration.
It's about decolonizing our whole approach to knowledge.
Recognizing that Western science,
Despite all its advancements.
has often played a role in pushing aside indigenous knowledge systems.
Yeah.
So we need to acknowledge those power imbalances.
And dismantle them.
But how?
Right, that's the question.
What can we actually do?
Well, the book emphasizes listening,
Really listen.
approaching these partnerships with humility,
Humility, yeah.
recognizing that indigenous communities have so much to offer.
So much knowledge, so much experience,
It's about being open,
open to different ways of knowing.
different ways of understanding the world,
Yeah, it's not just about hearing the words.
Right.
It's about understanding the context.
the nuances.
The unspoken protocols.
Yeah, paying attention to what's not being said,
Those subtle cues.
recognizing that communication styles can be different.
Very different.
And beyond listening,
Yeah.
it's about making sure they have control,
Control over their knowledge, their data,
moving away from that extractive model
where information is just taken
without permission,
without any benefit to the community,
respecting their intellectual property rights,
involving them in every step,
from collecting the data
analyzing it.
to sharing the findings,
Yeah, and making sure any benefits are shared fairly.
financial gain,
Scientific advancements,
social progress.
whatever it is, it needs to be shared
It's about giving back,
to the communities who shared their wisdom.
reciprocity,
A two-way street.
and acknowledging that knowledge isn't static.
It's always changing, always growing.
We need to make space for that.
For indigenous knowledge to adapt and evolve,
So it's not just about the past,
it's about the future.
ensuring it thrives for generations to come.
It's about creating a future where indigenous knowledge is integrated into everything we do.
How we manage resources,
How we design our city.
how we address climate change.
Everything.
It's not just a piece of the puzzle.
It's essential to understanding the whole picture.
So powerful.
These collaborations give me hope.
Me too.
They show that a different path is possible.
One where we learn from the past,
Respect different ways of knowing.
work together to create a better future.
A more just and sustainable future.
It's a beautiful vision.
It-
But what does all this mean for us?
For our everyday lives.
Yeah, what can we actually do
Well, it starts with recognizing that we all have a role to play
in supporting indigenous knowledge?
and fostering those equitable collaborations.
So where do we begin?
Start by educating yourself.
About the indigenous communities in your area,
Learn about their history, their culture.
their knowledge systems.
Support organizations that are protecting their rights
Be mindful of how you consume information and products.
that are derived from indigenous knowledge
Make sure you're doing it ethically.
responsibly
Take action, big or small.
to create a world where indigenous knowledge is celebrated.
So, as we wrap up today's deep dive,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with a thought.
Something to ponder?
What indigenous practice that we talked about today,
Really resonated with you.
and how can you apply those principles?
In your own life, your own work.
We encourage you to keep exploring.
The resources for further exploration section in the handbook is a great place to start.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it sparked a deeper appreciation for indigenous wisdom.
And its vital role in creating a sustainable future for all of us.
Until next time.
Take care.